Hi everybody. So this is the Honey Podcast again, and I'm Jodie,
Danny?
and we're back to this week discussing guilty pleasures when it comes to music. So like what songs that we absolutely love and really vibe with that we wouldn't necessarily listen when anyone else is around to because we might be a little bit embarrassed. But like I was looking at this and the thought of like saying what my guilty pleasure songs are, and yeah, there are some really cheesy like pop acts and stuff that I'm quite fond of that I would maybe be like, oh god, yeah, that fits. But a lot of really awesome bands as well have got some. I've got like maybe just that one song that is super cheesy by them that but that doesn't mean that they're still not a credible band. So if you hear us listing someone in this, we are not hating or saying that all their music is like cheesy or anything. It's just that they've got that one anthem that we might not like necessarily play really loud in the car with the windows down. That's all. So yeah, that's what my point of view is with a guilty pleasure anyway. Do you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. I have again, some really good acts that just have songs that I think are super guilty pleasures for me. And I also have some like artists in general that are like a guilty pleasure to me. And like Jody said, it's not that we think that they are bad artists. It's just someone that, for me, especially, like I put specific artists that I don't really like admit I listen to,
Yeah.
kind of to just kind of keep my cool exterior of my music taste.
Yeah. See, like, yeah, because I mean, like, that's the beauty of music, though, is that like the guilty pleasures are there, and yeah, they can be a bit cheesy and a bit embarrassing, but we like them because of the way that those songs make us feel. So, like, the artist did something wrong, like, right, to make us like love these particular songs, but at the same time, like, when you're known as like someone who generally likes a lot of alternative music or things like that, and then you turn around and you go, oh, blah 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 is my favorite band, or my favorites, they did that song and I love it. Yeah, you do get a few kind of like, oh really, I wouldn't expect that of you kind of thing. So like there's no shame in it. Like I've basically went through my Spotify. I make these random playlists for myself, and some of them are like ones that I would share to my friends and let them have a listen, and there's a couple I don't. And I'll be the first to admit that I've got because I'm a bit older as well. I've got quite a broad expanse of music, whether it be there's some pop punk bands here, some rock bands, and I've got some boy bands, some pop groups, and my first one, when you suggested doing this topic today for me to say I had a guilty pleasure song for, was Simple Plan, and they're making awesome tunes even now. Like I still occasionally see them pop up, but I'm Just a Kid is a guilty pleasure song, and it reminds me of Cheaper by the Dozen as well.
Oh my
I
gosh,
loved that film, and the really sad kid that like runs away and stuff, and I just reminds me of that song, and I loved that song. And it's one of those ones that if you hear, you kind of like you still know all the words to. So yeah, for me, definitely that would be my first pick. I'm Just a Kid by Simple Plan. So what?
yeah, to kind of roll off that, like I have one super similar. And like you said, these guys are still putting out good music, and I would actually admit to liking them in general because I do. But like this song specifically, I put down Good Charlotte, Bloody Valentine, because that just reminds me of like being a adolescent teenager,
I
preteen.
get that, and I love Good Charlotte's as well, but I also get that, like, like, I mean, like, a lot of people, like, I've got a lot of friends that, and there's some famous people that tell you that the first album they bought was like Good Charlotte's.
Exactly. And like that song was just so emo, and like it embodies literally everything that I could have explained myself as when I was growing up, and my mom and my sisters can vouch for it too. My dad, like, I was just like so crazy emo, and like Bloody Valentine by Good Charlotte was.
I relate to that on a different song, and it's crazy when you said that, because as soon as you said that, because I'd already said Simple Plan, like you made me think Welcome to My Life.
Oh, that's another great one.
That was me as a moody teenager. That song was my song, my anthem. And but like that, you could kind of say that was a guilty pleasure song, but at the same time, it was kind of like a vibe of the generation at the time as well. Like it, but it's quite a self-deprecating, feeling sorry for yourself song kind of thing. Yeah, but everyone knows the words to that.
You know?
Yeah, and I love, but oh yeah, when I hear that song, it just takes me back, makes me feel young again. But I thought of like some other songs that, you know, some artists I don't know that well, but like I have it's kind of embarrassing, and my partner even cringes at me for liking this song. But do you remember the Dandy Warhols Bohemian Like You?
No, I don't.
You don't know that song? I think it was like on the Levi adverts or something like that. I'm not singing it, but you will need to listen to it after this. It was like, I might have only been big over here, but they're an American band, I think.
I mean, maybe once I listen to it, I'll know. But
I mean,
off the top of my head, I don't know.
I'm gonna see if I can find it here, and like, I don't know what the sound quality will translate as on here. So, if you have a like quiet blip here when you're listening, it's because I've edited it out. But I'll see if I can find it. Yeah. Wait for it to kick in.
Oh, yeah.
You remember it now?
Yeah, I do. I totally do.
And the lyrics to that song, just like if you listen to them, they're kind of like hilarious. But
yeah, that's a total good one.
And it's a total guilty pleasure, but also a song that I feel like if it was released tomorrow, like everyone would like jump on it and know it and sing along to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
See, that's more of a hidden gem, I guess, than a guilty pleasure, but that song lyrically is just hilarious. So, and it's not one that, and it is definitely one that if I slipped it on the jukebox in a bar or something, I'd get a few weird looks, I think. But yeah.
I would say, you threw me off with that one. But I would say sure for a funny lyric type of one that I like. And again, I love all music, so like, but this song, T-Pain, Buy You a Drink, was like the embodiment of like my senior week, summer, all that nonsense. Like when I hear that song, I feel like I am 18 again, and it's just a guilty pleasure. I'll hear it on the radio. I'll be like, do I turn it off? Like, so like that's definitely a fun lyrically one that I would pick.
It's one I don't know very well as well, but like obviously I know T-Pain, but I feel like that's more of a US UK divide on the whole airplay front of when it was released and stuff.
Right.
And we definitely over in the UK and Europe as a whole have a reputation for a lot more cheesier pop music, like as well, like bubblegum pop.
Yeah.
It's you know, it's definitely like over here we get a lot more of that, like on the main stations and things. So I mean, it's evolved over time, and if anything now it's this is a different subject for a different day, but like I feel like it was like that when like T-Pain was like, you know, in that era for you when that song dropped, it was like that. But now actually radio has become a little bit more pretentious over here, and it is more alternative, and it's not necessarily the people you'll hear that are in the charts now. They will it is more about pushing new music and new artists out, which is much better. But yeah, but back in the day it was definitely a lot more cheesier. like, and you saying that, it made me think actually like of a band that did a cover, and yeah, they're still around, but like you don't hear about them a crazy amount, and that was Alien Ant Farm with Smooth Criminal.
Oh yes, like
Now they also did Movies, which is one of my favorite songs ever, but yeah, Smooth Criminal, that is a guilty pleasure cheesy song.
yeah.
And I'm willing to even say I preferred that version, maybe because I'm more of a rock fan than to the actual Smooth Criminal, which is a really bold thing to say, but
I
yeah,
feel that.
I totally loved that.
I
And I
could
loved the tongue-in-cheek of the music video as well, and I can still remember that music video like it was yesterday.
oh my god.
And it's quite funny because I'm thinking, like, we're mentioning these songs, and I'd like to think that some of the people that listen and tune in might know these, but if they don't, they should check them out. And I might even make a Spotify playlist for them of our picks.
Bad idea. Totally.
Yeah.
I think that, like you said, with that cover, kind of snowballing off that, thing that I'm like super into and is I think is like a guilty pleasure of mine is like finding movie soundtracks, like not necessarily musicals, but like American Pie soundtrack is amazing.
Matt Nathanson laid from that soundtrack that song is epic. But
there's
yeah,
so many good soundtracks, and like I know one I recently downloaded and talked about like to my friends was Not Another Teen Movie. Like the soundtrack is so good for that. Like that, those are definitely something I would consider a guilty pleasure of mine. Is
yeah, and then you've got like Sum 41 on American Pie as well, haven't you? And Blink. And Blink were even cameoed in the first American Pie movie, weren't they?
Yep.
God, I've got to rewatch them. But yeah, like, not being biased and making myself sound super old here, but I feel like our gen had like the best teen flick movies.
Yeah.
Like, I know the 80s had some good ones, but like American Pie, Road Trip, what was the one that has Lustra, Scotty Doesn't Know in it?
Oh my goodness. I can't think of it, but I know what you're talking about.
And we're going to come off this conversation, but that is a guilty pleasure song.
Yes, it is.
And it's brilliant. And I can't remember, but Matt Damon played the guy singing it.
Oh my gosh.
Why do we not know?
I can picture it 100%.
It's a film like Road Trip. It's like that. Oh, that's going to drive me insane. Why did I have to think about that halfway through a podcast? I do have Google though. I could look, but that's going to drive me nuts. But yeah, that you saying that, and then about like the American Pie soundtracks and that. Another song from one of my favorite bands when I was a teenager, and they did do a fair few guilty pleasure like songs of mine. Was Bloodhound Gang.
Oh my goodness.
And they did an album called Hooray for Boobies, and on that it had The Bad Touch, which I knew every single word to. And then they did Mope on that same album, and they sampled Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Relax on that album as well. It's just an iconic guilty pleasure CD, but yeah, not necessarily one that I would like scream from the rooftops that I love.
Agreed. I did love that album though, and
it was so good, and it had hidden tracks on it as well, and that was like and I used to love that.
To throw in this one that you mentioned earlier, because you know we can't not talk about Machine Gun Kelly. You mentioned Limp Bizkit. That was a great guilty pleasure. Like,
from the chocolate starfish and hot dog flavored water era. Yeah, like Rollin' was like an iconic like anthem, but let's be honest, compared to like other stuff they've done, like it was cheesy for them,
right?
I think.
Right, and that album in specific, they went and they did a tour for that, and Machine Gun Kelly was the opener. And I'm telling you, it was one of the funnest shows I've ever been to, solely because Limp Bizkit, like it was like they just stomped right out of the 90s music video. Fred Durst had the Adidas on, the red cap. Like, it was just a mess. It was so fun.
Yeah, but like it was one of those albums. Yeah, it's got quite a few like cheddar songs on it. But then if you think about the lead song that came off it for Mission Impossible, Take a Look Around. Yeah, that's an awesome, like, definitely not a guilty pleasure. It's just an awesome song. So it led with that, but then like had all these fun songs after, and it made it made it a pretty much a no skip album.
Right.
Had this, so that it just goes to prove you can have, this band can have these elements where you have these songs that you're a bit like, oh, I don't want to admit that that's my favorite song by them, but I love it. But you know, I'm sure there's a few people out there that may have like broke down and like done a bit of Limp Bizkit on karaoke.
Oh, I have.
That was aimed at you.
I sure have. I have sang Limp Bizkit on karaoke, and it was terrifying. But at the same time.
I think that's cool though. I wish I had the confidence to do something like Limp Bizkit on karaoke, if I'm honest. But my guilty pleasure, like go-to karaoke songs, would be like the epitome of guilty pleasure songs, 80s music, which I can get away with quite proudly saying. And like, because 80s has kind of had a revival recently,
right.
People might, you know, even not even realize that like some of the like bands that are out now were influenced by like the likes of Duran Duran with The Reflex and Take On Me by a-ha, and they are definite guilty pleasures, but they're songs that I know all the words to and they're funny. And like I've definitely done Summer of '69 by Bryan Adams on the karaoke, and that's a guilty pleasure song.
That's a great song though.
And the Ataris covered that, and that was an awesome cover too.
I remember thinking for quite a long time that the Ataris was like, they were the original singers of that song. Like I had no idea it was a cover until like years later, and my mom's friend was like, this is not the Ataris, like this is so and so, and I was like, oh, this is a cover? I did not know that.
But I will say, like, I think I have an emotional attachment to Summer of '69 because I think it's the only song I've ever heard with my name in it, even though it's about a boy. So I don't know why. I think that's why I like singing that on the karaoke and pointing at myself when it says Jodie got married when I actually haven't. But yeah, I feel like that was my like drunk moment. And my other guilty pleasure karaoke song, which I've done in front of an ex-boyfriend, which was kind of funny because he was working on the bar and the whole pub kind of sang it along with me, was Gives You Hell by All American Rejects.
Oh, another classic.
Yeah. It's kind of like, well, from them, it's one of the guilty pleasure songs, I think, that you could say that they do.
And like you said, I think that's a really important kind of idea to like talk about, is that like on the Limp Bizkit album, it's the same way for me with Good Charlotte. Like Bloody Valentine was like a super guilty pleasure song. But the rest of that album, like they did a lot for music as well. I mean, they paved the road for a lot of artists after them, and there was a lot of great songs on that album.
Totally, and they're a really influential band, and like they even like, I mean, they manage my favorite. Well, they manage my favorite band. The Madden Brothers manage water parks, so yeah, I managed to create them into another into another podcast. But like, you know, I can actually safely say I don't think that any of Water Park songs are guilty pleasures for me. I'd say Stupid For You is pretty cheesy song, but I also feel like it's supposed to just be an you know, like a I really love you kind of happy poppy kind of song. So I don't feel like that's a guilty pleasure, but like I feel like if I could come back to revisit it in 10 years and say it would be.
Yeah.
Which is crazy if you think about that with people now, like, you know, people could, with bands now, you think, oh, in 10 years time, that could be a song someone's actually like, oh, I really like that song, but on the down low.
I'm going to say one that is going to make some waves, but for me, and I'll explain why, a guilty pleasure band for me is One Direction. Because at first I was like, my sisters love them, absolutely love them, and I used to make fun of them all the time. And then again, my sisters drug me to the show where I don't know exactly which one it was, but when 5 Seconds of Summer was opening for them, and then like from that moment on, like I loved them so much, and I was like such a ride or die fan for them, and like it's so funny to have come that far. Like at first, like I said, they were like a total guilty pleasure for me, and sometimes they still are. But I'm openly admitting that I like One Direction now.
As the diplomatic One Direction fan here, who I don't kind of consider any of their songs guilty pleasures, but for someone who, as I know what I know of you, like generally likes pop punk, alternative music, rap, I can understand you saying that they're a guilty pleasure for you because they're far more mainstream.
Right.
So like I totally understand where you're coming from. I do. And you can see the growth that they made as a band from them as a band into their solo careers now. I mean, like obviously What Makes You Beautiful is a bubblegum pop song.
Right.
But then they left with songs like as a band with songs like History. And then if you look at where Harry is now with his music, and Niall Louis, Zayn and Liam, they've definitely all got their own styles that they've come away and grown with. So yeah, I get that. Like I'm a Taylor Swift fan, and I will definitely say there was a point in my life, if I look back on reflection, where some of her songs are guilty pleasures. Love Story is a cheesy guilty pleasure song.
But I love
it. And I love it. It's about Romeo and Juliet. To an extent, and like it's a cheesy love story, isn't it? So yeah, I get that.
Artists' early work is like a guilty pleasure for us, and then now they've progressed and they're not so much a guilty pleasure anymore. We can admit that we like that.
Yeah, like they've evolved totally.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I mean, we had bands over here. We went through a generation of like mixtures of pop bands, like where there's a mix of boys and girls. And we had a band over here that were exceptionally poppy and cheesy, and I can happily and proudly say that they are like a guilty pleasure band. And they were called originally they were called S Club 7.
Oh my gosh, I know S Club 7.
And yeah, you guys know them as well. Yeah, they were like a total guilty pleasure. Like everyone knows Reach for the Stars and Bring It All Back. And yeah, totally. They were definitely they're definitely on a playlist in my phone somewhere for when I'm having a cheeky day.
I think a good one that I put down that I can agree with is Ashlee Simpson. She was a guilty pleasure of mine. Pieces of Me, that was like those songs that everyone knew, everyone sang. Yeah.
You've just made me think, like it starts a chain of like songs that you remember when you think about like what's a cheesy guilty pleasure song. And the key to what we've been saying about people is their evolution, because I think that 7 Things by Miley Cyrus is a guilty pleasure song. But if you look at where she is now with like Wrecking Ball and Midnight Sky and that, they're like totally different. So yeah,
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, definitely.
I also put one on my list that it makes sense for me saying that Drake, while I love Drake and I think he's talented and stuff, some of his earlier stuff is great too, don't get me wrong, but sometimes when I like listen to Drake, all I can think about is Degrassi, because I was such a big Degrassi fan that like I gotta get myself
this is I hear so many people talk about Degrassi and I never watched it.
Oh, I loved it.
But I don't think we had it over here. We may have, but I feel like it might have like escaped me. But yeah, I hear loads of people say how much they love that.
And like not to say he's not a great artist, but sometimes like I laugh about that to myself, and it's like a guilty pleasure of mine.
Oh no, I get that. Like totally. Like when I was like super young, I was obsessed with NSYNC.
Oh my gosh.
I remember being so excited when No Strings Attached came out, and Bye 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 is definitely a guilty pleasure song, up there with It's Gonna Be Me, tearing up my heart. Want You Back. They did quite a few of them that, but then look at what like Justin Timberlake did after that with Justified. Like, I still feel like that's an album that slaps today.
Oh yeah.
So
I think that Backstreet Boys are the same way, because like you said, I was a Backstreet Boys girl. You had to pick one usually.
Yes, you did. Back in the day, you were a Backstreet Boy or NSYNC, and I was NSYNC.
Yeah. And so like I think the same thing. I mean, Backstreet Boys, I saw them on tour like maybe a year or 2 years ago, and like they are still selling out stadiums. I mean,
yeah, it's incredible.
So, you know, like, sure, they're a guilty pleasure, but like, guess what? They're still rocking it. So
yeah, this is a good explanation of me and how I am with music. When I was a teenager, my two favorite bands for a good couple of years at the same time consistently were NSYNC and Korn.
Oh my god!
And if that doesn't explain how I am with music, then I don't think anything will. Yeah, because I went and saw. I went to a show where, like, I think it was like a radio show where NSYNC were performing, and then like a week later, I went to the Untouchables Korn tour in London Docklands Arena. Yeah, and so that definitely sums up. And I had a best friend at the time, and we both were exactly the same. We both loved the same bands, and everyone thought we were slightly insane because you couldn't pick two bands more different from each other.
Right. I mean, but that like you said, that for me is the fun in music, because I'm very secure in that aspect. Like, I love alternative, I love pop punk, I love pop, even I love everything. But then like I can also go to these hardcore shows and stuff like that, and still have time. Like, it's just, I'm all over the board with my music taste.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what made me think about that, especially when I brought up NSYNC, and then I went to see Korn. Korn's support act for that show was Puddle of Mud, and I'm sorry, but Blurry and She Hates Me, two guilty pleasure songs right out there.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. So,
incredible songs, but guilty pleasures nonetheless.
Oh, and an incredible band at the time. Like, everyone, I can't remember anyone around me like disliking them. But you hear that song going in a bar, and either of them, and people sing along. Just like, even though, and this is a bold one for me to say as a guilty pleasure, but Mr. Brightside by The Killers.
Oh my gosh.
It's a guilty pleasure because it's become an anthem, but it's generally, and I mean, I'm someone who I used to, but I don't drink at all. But that's a song anymore. But when you're in a bar or a club environment, or you're with your friends at camping or anything, and that song comes on, everyone will sing it. But then, like, they'll all look around afterwards like, I kind of lost my mind and went hard there, didn't I? Oops. Like, it's a shower. I feel like guilty pleasure songs are songs you would sing in the shower.
Right.
I suppose, more than necessarily sing around friends. But that's one of those ones that transcends being like that. But then they do such super cool, awesome songs like Human and When We Were Young. Right. And they're definitely not a guilty pleasure song. They're just awesome.
They're just good songs. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I feel like, in about 10 years' time, that sort of song will be one of those guilty pleasure songs that is up there with Living on a Prayer, Bon Jovi.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just kind of one of those ones that will always get airplay. It will always be, but it is a little bit cheesy because of how overplayed and overused it is. Do you have any other artists or songs that you wanted to add on to that as well?
I think that I definitely had a lot. I will say one more that I wrote down and I will mention is Blink-182 New Era, because people give Blink-182 now such hate because obviously it's not the original lineup. But for myself, I'm a huge Matt Skiba fan, and I love Alkaline Trio. So I still love Blink, and I still think they're great. I think they went a little bit more poppy, of course, but I still think they're awesome.
I agree with you. I'm an old Blink fan, and I loved all their older stuff, but I also think that sorry, I'm like not on camera at all there, but I was looking at my list, but I feel like 9 was an awesome album.
Yeah, me too. I loved
Yeah,
it.
totally awesome album, like outright. And you know, I feel like old Blink was cool, but new Blink is as well. And I also really feel like the little bits they've done in between have what shaped them and made them so cool. Like I liked Boxcar Racer for the hot 5 seconds they were around. So I mean, I Feel So was also along the whole Welcome to My Life kind of vibe. If you think
Right.
about it lyrically, it was
Sure.
just done in a way that I would say was less cheesy, which is why people don't think of that as a guilty pleasure song, which
Right.
is a really good way to round that up actually. Because you look, and I feel like this is something we're going to revisit, because like it would also be kind of funny in like a couple of months time or whatever, coming back and thinking about songs of this year that were guilty pleasures.
For
And
sure.
yeah, and I'd be really intrigued, because we have had some participation but not a lot, but it'd be really cool to hear other people's guilty pleasures and whether
Yeah.
they like, you know, like what they think what would they would consider a guilty pleasure to be, because it's one of those things that like I get it's something that you're supposed to be a little bit cringe and shy about, but you know, some people really don't care. They're like, nope, I like this song, so, and
Yeah.
I
It's
own
not
it.
even like a guilty pleasure to some people.
Yeah, but you know, I live in a household where I get a lot of weird looks when I like with a certain. Well, I say that I don't anymore. So like, you know, it is like you said, when you like a band that's as cheesy and clean cut as NSYNC were, and then you also love a band like Korn with Jonathan Davies, and like I had literally had posters
Just
collaging my bedroom as a teenager of NSYNC, and my window was like a shrine to Korn with the Korn doll. I had like Korn dolls like dangling from my like window.
I love that so much.
I was such a mood. I really was. But
I
yeah.
love that though. It's such a solid transition.
Yeah, I mean, my poor parents, man. But yeah, I don't know. I think that might be because I've got a mum who's extremely pop music. ABBA, massive guilty pleasure band. Even when they were out, according to my mum, they were a band that were big, that people liked, but they didn't admit to it.
Admit they
My
liked.
mum, that's my mum's. My mum told me that, and she was like, you know, she would know. She was in the 70s, so yeah, like she's got like that. And then you've got my dad, who like is the polar opposite. He liked the Jam, the Clash, and Bowie, and things like that. So like my dad's the credible music, and my mum's the cheesy one. So mixed together,
That's
it's like
where
the
you were.
perfect
That's
storm
where
of
you
crazy
did.
tasty music. But yeah, that's all I've got for today. But like we said, we'd love to hear your thoughts, either in the comment section on YouTube or on our socials that we'll provide. So yeah, from me and from Danny, that's a big goodbye, and I'll see you soon.